On March 3, 2026, just before noon local time, a magnitude 6.1 earthquake struck off the west coast of Sumatra, about 65 kilometers southeast of the coastal town of Sinabang, roughly 26 kilometers deep, and within minutes, it was over. No tsunami warning, no casualties, no structural damage, just families running into the streets and walking back inside once the shaking stopped. Indonesia's BMKG cleared the event almost immediately. The USGS tagged it at the lowest possible threat level. And by early afternoon, the wire services had run their one-paragraph stories and moved on. It should not have ended there. But when the USGS published its tectonic summary for the event, buried below the green alert graphic where almost nobody scrolls, one line changed everything about what routine means in this part of the ocean. This earthquake occurred as the result of thrust faulting on the Sunda megathrust, the same subduction interface that produced the magnitude 9.1 on December 26, 2004. 250,000 people died the last time this fault moved at full power, and last Tuesday it sent a pulse. But here is the detail that tells the real story. In the USGS event page for March 3rd, past the headline and the green alert badge, there is a tectonic summary that almost nobody reads. A map of the Sunda megathrust, overlaid with the colored patches of every major rupture since 2004, and beneath it a paragraph of institutional text explaining what just moved and why. That paragraph carries a phrase that should have stopped anyone who read it: thrust faulting on or near the subduction interface. The same mechanical description the USGS used for the 2004 event, the magnitude 9.1 that ruptured 1,300 kilometers of this boundary and killed over 227,000 people in a single morning. The map tells the rest. It shows the 2004 rupture zone stretching from Simeulue northward, the 2005 Nias patch directly south of it, and then, right where the March 3rd dot sits, the edge of a gap where centuries of strain have been building with no major release since the 1700s. The summary does not warn. It just shows you where the last ruptures ended and where the next one has room to begin. To understand how the Sunda megathrust arrived here, watch the timeline accelerate. Minutes after the main shock, BMKG runs the tsunami protocol and clears it. No coastal warning for any province along Sumatra's western shore. The USGS posts a magnitude 6.1 at 26 kilometers depth, tagging green, while EMSC in Europe locks at the same magnitude, but drops the depth much shallower. A spread that matters enormously for a subduction thrust event, but draws no comment from any agency. Within the hour, a resident named Ahmadi tells AFP from Sinabang that he panicked and fled his house, then walked back inside because the jolt was short and nothing fell. Rahmat Triono, head of Indonesia's Earthquake and Tsunami Center, confirmed strong shaking on Simeulue, windows rattling, walls creaking, glassware breaking, but no structural damage. By midday, the wire services have their story, and by early afternoon, the event has cycled off the feeds entirely. No follow-up bulletin addresses the tectonic context, the fact that this thrust faulting event sits directly on the megathrust interface in a segment that has ruptured catastrophically within living memory. The summary page goes up quietly, and the earthquake disappears before sunset. But the subduction zone did not disappear with it. The March 3rd quake ruptured inside a collision system stretching over 5,000 kilometers, and systems like that do not send a magnitude 6 as a farewell. But that was only the beginning. The Sunda megathrust is not a fault line. It is a trench running more than 5,000 kilometers from Myanmar, down the entire western coast of Sumatra, past Java, and onward toward the lesser Sunda Islands. The Indo-Australian plate is being shoved beneath the Sunda plate at roughly 60 to 65 millimeters per year, and the convergence hits the trench at an angle, splitting into megathrust slip along the subduction interface and strike slip movement along the Sumatra fault. A separate crack running the full length of the island like a second engine in parallel. Watch how this subduction system works. The Indo-Australian plate pushes northeast, meets the overriding Sunda plate, and because it is older and denser, it bends downward into the mantle. The descending slab drags against the plate above, locking along the contact zone and building friction across segments hundreds of kilometers long. Pressure loads for decades, sometimes centuries, and when a lock patch finally breaks, the overriding plate snaps upward, displacing the ocean floor and launching a tsunami that can cross an entire ocean basin in hours. But here is what the data actually showed. The March 3rd event ruptured at roughly 26 kilometers depth. On or near the plate interface itself, offshore Simeulue, the same island that acted as the northern hinge point of the 2004 rupture. Since 2004 alone, the plates have accumulated over 1.3 meters of additional strain, energy either bleeding off in moderate events like this one or being stored for the next major rupture. Here is the problem not making headlines. The Sunda megathrust breaks in segments, and the segments that ruptured in 2004 and 2005 did not release all the accumulated strain. Paleoseismic studies on the Mentawai Islands have identified a section south of the 2004 zone where centuries of strain remain locked since 1797. That gap sits directly south of where last Tuesday's earthquake struck, and the monitoring network covering it relies on an offshore buoy system that has suffered repeated vandalism. The same system that was partially dead when the 2010 Mentawai tsunami killed over 500 people less than 300 kilometers away. And then it got worse. On the morning of December 26, 2004, just before 8 o'clock local time, the megathrust ruptured. Roughly 1,300 kilometers of the plate boundary tore open in under 10 minutes. And the seafloor displaced vertically by up to 15 meters. The ocean moved. Within 20 minutes, waves were hitting the coast of Aceh, the same province where residents felt last Tuesday's shaking. The tsunami reached Thailand in 2 hours, Sri Lanka in 3, and Africa before the day was over. More than 227,000 people died across 14 countries, and in Banda Aceh, entire neighborhoods were stripped to bare foundations. The city lost roughly a third of its population in a single morning, and the epicenter sat less than 100 kilometers from where last Tuesday's magnitude 6.1 fired. But 2004 was not the last time this machine killed. On October 25, 2010, a magnitude 7.8 struck offshore the Mentawai Islands, and the shaking on land was weak. Some residents did not even get out of bed. The earthquake was a tsunami earthquake, a rare failure mode where the rupture creeps through soft sediment near the trench, and producing almost no felt shaking, but displacing enormous volumes of water. Waves hit the coast within 15 minutes, and on the island of Simeulue, the run-up exceeded 16 meters, a wall of water taller than a 4-story building, launched by a quake most people did not notice. Over 500 died, 20,000 were displaced, and the village of Betu Monga on South Pagai was destroyed entirely. 2 of the offshore buoys had been vandalized and were not transmitting. But even fully functional, the waves arrived in 15 minutes, hitting villages with no electricity, no phones, and no roads to high ground. No warning system could have closed that gap. These disasters are not ancient. The children who survived them are adults now, living on the same coastline, above the same subduction zone, within range of the same machine that sent a pulse last Tuesday. Back at the USGS Tectonic summary, the subduction diagram was still sitting there, convergence arrows pointing northeast, where clean lines showing where the last ruptures ended and where the next one has room to begin. As of this recording, the March 3rd event remains classified as a green alert routine earthquake. No follow-up from the USGS, no revised analysis from BMKG, no statement from any agency addressing the tectonic context buried in the summary. The event page sits in the archive, generating no discussion. Case closed. Routine subduction event, no further activity expected. Except nothing about this fits that filing. The Sunda megathrust has produced a magnitude 9.1 within the lifetime of most people watching this, And 16 years later, it generated a tsunami earthquake with 16-meter run-up that killed over 500 while the warning system sat partially dead. The Mentawai Gap, directly south of the March 3rd epicenter, has not released since 1797. That is 229 years of lock convergence. Building inside a segment, the monitoring infrastructure has already failed to protect once. The question is not if. The question is when. How do you tell the families in Banda Aceh, the ones who rebuilt where 100,000 people died, that the engine beneath them fired a pulse last Tuesday and the global response was a green dot and a wire story that disappeared before dinner? How do you explain that the Mentawai Islands sit above a strain gap loading for over 2 centuries, protected by a buoy network with a documented history of failure? And if this is what the data looks like for a magnitude 6.1 with 0 casualties, what does it look like when the next rupture breaks across the Mentawai segment instead of beside it? The USGS Tectonic summary for March 3rd is still in that archive. One map, one paragraph, the same geometry that has already killed 250,000 people. The page does not speculate, does not reassure, and does not care whether anyone reads it. The diagram kept sitting there. The 7 million people along western Sumatra's coast were never built to do the same.